Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily, the first English news program in Poland. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. The Polish Teachers' Union, or ZNP, is demanding a high pay raise for teachers or face union strike. The leader of the association, Sławomir Broniarz, threatened that students might not get to go to another class if the union demands will not be met. Uproar caused among high school students and their parents forced Mr. Broniarz to retract the claim and apologize.
The strike during the exams is not all, says the president of the Polish Teachers' Union, Sławomir Broniarz, and threatens that children won't be able to pass to next classes. The teachers and the pedagogical councils are responsible for assessing and promoting students. It's a powerful tool in the teachers' hands, and we want the government to be aware of that. If I decide to use that tool, we will have a true catastrophe concerning recruitment or finishing educational cycles by the Polish students.
Wypowiedź pana przewodniczącego Broniarza.
Mr. Broniarz's words sound very desperate.
To jest po prostu branie
It's like taking the students hostage.
jako zakładników w tym sporze.
Sławomir Broniarz doesn't want to meet with the Minister of Education, but demands to see the Prime Minister. The Ministry of National Education released a statement yesterday in which the institution condemned Broniarz's words and called them irresponsible. Once again, we stress that teachers should be earning more. We appreciate their work and already gave some of the promised pay raises. The next ones are planned for September 2019. In total, in the next 17 months, teachers will be getting 16.1% raise. It's not the end of our work to raise their salaries.
Trzeba też przyznać, że
We should remember that last year we raised the teachers' salaries by 5.75%, this year in January by another 5%, and we are planning to raise them by yet another 5% in September next year. That's more than 16% in 1.5 years. Even in economy, there weren't raises like that.
na przykład podatek dochodowy.
The main postulate of the Polish Teachers' Union is the raising of the basic teachers' salaries by 1,000 zloty. Most of the teachers' salaries are 180% more than that. Average teacher's salaries for intern teacher 100%, full-time teacher 111%, appointed teacher 144%, certified teacher 184% of the basic salary set for teachers annually in the budget bill. The teachers' strike is to take place on April 8th. Teachers participating in the strike won't come to work. On April 10th, the junior high exams are to take place. On April 15th, the 8th grade primary school exams, and on May 6th, the Matura high school exams.
Pope Francis, the head of the Catholic Church, gave a speech at St. Peter's Square today, mentioning the terrorist attack in Christchurch, New Zealand, where a couple dozen Muslims were shot. Pope Francis expressed his deepest regret and asked for prayers for the victims.
In these days, added to the pain over wars and conflicts that do not cease to afflict humanity, there were additional grief inflicted upon the victims of the horrible attack against two mosques in Christchurch in New Zealand. I pray for the dead, the injured and their families. I am close to our Muslim brothers and to all that community, and I renew an invitation to join in prayer and gestures of peace to combat hate and violence. Let's pray together in silence for our Muslim brothers who have been killed.
The Polish ambassador to Israel, Marek Magierowski, stated in an interview to the Israel news outlet iNews24 that the years-long foreign media portrayal of Poland as a collaborator of Germany in World War II and the Holocaust has forced Polish politicians to react in form of possible legislative actions.
Ambassador Marek Magierowski is very active across Israeli news outlets, this time appearing on iNews24, a Spanish-language newscast. When asked about the relations between Poland and Israel, he reminded the audience that before World War II, Poland was home to one of the world's largest Jewish communities, which was almost wiped out by the Nazi Germany. However, for many years, foreign media have shown Poland as a collaborator of Germany during World War II and the Holocaust, and it has finally forced the politicians' reaction, said the Polish ambassador to Israel. The idea was to create a law that would help fight such a narrative in a more effective way. I have the impression that this law has been misunderstood. People were convinced that this law would prevent an open discussion on the Holocaust and that Holocaust survivors who visit Poland won't be able to tell their story. It is an absurd. It was not the intention of the law, claims Magierowski. The Polish deputy in Tel Aviv explained that the narrative of the co-responsibility of Poland and Germany is very painful from the point of view of the Polish society. He also referred to the statement of Israel Minister of Foreign Affairs, describing it as evidently racist. I will quote after my Prime Minister in saying that we sincerely hope that Israeli politicians and the most important leaders of the Hebrew state will be able to react to such declarations. Adds the ambassador. We await the Israel authorities to take action in this matter, said Ambassador of Poland.
Zuzana Čaputová won the first round of presidential elections in Slovakia. As informed by the Slovak Statistical Office, Čaputová received 40.55% support, while the runner-up, Maroš Šefčovič, managed to secure 18.67% of the popular vote. The pair will face off in the second round of elections.
What I can see from the results of the first term is a call for changes. Slovak voters can imagine a candidate who has not been involved in politics for a long time, but one who brings a new point of view on today's reality and different opinions regarding solving the problems.
Overall turnout in yesterday's elections was 48.74%. The second round of presidential elections in Slovakia is scheduled for March 30th. Commentators point the attention to the results of the candidates who came in third and fourth place. Supreme Court judge and its former president, Stefan Harabin, managed to secure 14.35% of the votes, while the leader of the anti-European and anti-immigration People's Party, Our Slovakia, Marian Kotleba, 10.41% of the votes.
The Polish F1 driver Robert Kubica is back on track. 8 years after the life-threatening crash that almost took his left arm, Kubica competed in an F1 race on equal footing with other drivers. His compatriot admired the 34-year-old driver for his courage and perseverance that enabled him to return to the top of the motorsport scene.
It was the first race after a long absence, and it would be a stretch to call it a success. In fact, Robert Kubica arrived last at the finish line and 3 laps behind the winner, Valery Bottas. Yet no one puts the blame on the Polish driver for poor performance, as the Red Bull's contracted driver Pierre Gasly collided with his car during the course, and fixing the front wing cost the Polish driver a minute of race time, resulting in his last position. After the race, Robert Kubica said, "It was my first standing start after 8 years and 4 months. I had never done a standing start on the grid since Abu Dhabi 2010, and actually it was quite good. But overall, I am leaving Australia with definitely more experience and reasonably happy, although I will never think I would say something like this, having this pace and finishing so far behind." With a full season ahead, only time will tell whether Kubica, still carrying the scars of his injuries, can hustle his way through the pack and perform his old trademark of taking performance out of his vehicle beyond its capabilities. His fans can't wait for Robert's next appearance on the racetrack on March 31st.
That's it for today. See you next time on Poland Daily. But stay tuned for the Poland Daily Weather Report, followed by the Poland Daily Business section.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's see the forecast for tonight. In central and northwestern Poland, skies will be clear. In all regions we are expecting rainfall. Temperatures will rise. A pleasant 6 degrees we will see on the south. In central Poland, temperature will range from 2 to 3 degrees. The pressure begins to rise. Let's see the forecast for tomorrow. It will be breezy tomorrow. Mostly in the north, wind will be gusty. In most regions we may expect plenty of sunlight, but with showers. Temperature ranging from 7 degrees on the northwest to 10 on the south and on the eastern Poland. Let's check the weather for the next days. On Tuesday, sky will be cloudless and sunny. Little rainfall will appear on the northeast. The highest temperature we will see on the southwest, 9 degrees. On Wednesday, pressure will be high, and rainfall will leave our country. Temperature will range from 6 to 9 degrees. On Thursday, temperatures and pressure will increase. The highest temperature will be 12 degrees. Showers will appear across Poland. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
You're watching Poland Daily Business Edition. Our guest tonight is Tomasz Cioska of Innovenergy, director and main shareholder. Sir, welcome to the show.
Welcome, everybody.
In Poland, as we know, lots of money has been spent for innovative products, yet we don't see on the market, on the world area, any Polish company that comparably reaches the places that has those Googles, Facebooks, and Twitters of the world.
Well, you are mentioning the IT businesses, and I think that Poland is quite good at IT business. So I might say perhaps there is an IT business that is a Google, let's say a small Google. I know myself a couple of companies, IT companies are really good, and they export their products throughout the world. So in IT, we are quite good, and I hope let's say that this positive outlook of this business is not spoiled by grants, because I know that there is going to be a lot of support for gaming and for e-things, and as I know, always grants, spoil good products and good markets and good technologies.
In our country, the situation is that lots of export is being produced as a contractor. So the companies have not their own brand. They produce the things for someone else, and they basically compete on the basis of the cost of the production.
Exactly, and we have, if you have a branch office or a division or assembly line of a large company, you don't have usually a research center in the country. There are exceptions, but quite rare. But you mentioned something about, foreign markets. We have to bear in mind that Poland is a large market itself. We are talking about 38 million people, more or less, because of the immigration. You might consider European Union as a single market, of course, with all the limitations and off-tariff barriers, especially imposed by Germany, but also other countries. But in general, we are talking about nearly 400 million internal market. And this is our marketplace. Unfortunately, the big problem is that all our, let's say, big names and brand names were sold. We don't have any, and I was really disappointed seeing two big companies or two big brand names being sold recently. I think that was a big mistake of Polish government to let Solaris and Ursus go, because these are the names that are identified worldwide. I don't want to talk about their financial situation or the real potential, but you must not sell this kind of very important assets. And also, what is very important, we are talking about the sales force. They had the networks all around the world. And those two companies were sold, and it was a tremendous mistake. And another thing is that both companies were involved in allegedly a key area of Polish innovation and Polish, let's say, economical strategy of our government, the strategy to build electromobility. And where is our strategy? Where is our goal? Where is the position of Poland in the world economy? I don't see this vision. Unfortunately, I'm very sorry to say that, but I cannot see that in the policy of our government. There are two problems. Problem number one is let's say, the lack of collaboration between industry and research area, or let's say the academic sector. The cooperation was blocked almost 30 years ago, and this link hasn't been re-established yet, and this is a main problem. So the universities, the research institutes are not interested in real collaboration with Polish companies. And the second problem is the lack of, as it's called, the appetite for innovation among large state-owned companies. There is a tendency for the last 3.5 years to nationalize and repolonize, as it's called, large areas of Polish industry, which is in a way good. But unfortunately, I see that the situation among those state-owned companies has not improved with respect to the collaboration with Polish research area and Polish innovative SMEs. This is a big problem. So we have a lot of good engineers, we have a lot of good ideas and inventions, but they are not implemented in Poland. So even if a researcher, which is quite rare, has a very good idea, he has to go outside of Poland to commercialize his or her products.
This is probably the case of whole Europe. When we are looking at France or Germany, most of the companies that invent big, bold things are sort of supported by states, by the state, versus United States, where those companies got private funding and then private supporters, and they are free to fall.
I would say it's a bit of an oversimplification because, as you know, lots of American businesses grew because of direct or indirect support from primarily military area. So this is being supported by the government, in fact, federal government. For example, lots of IT companies were supported by the military sphere. So I wouldn't say that the situation in the States is so ideal. On the other hand, the situation in Europe, especially, I know that especially British and German markets, is completely different. We can see that a lot of researchers from the academia sphere, from the universities, they take active seats in the boards of the companies. They have their offices within the companies, and they actively secure very close ties between the research area and the industry. So the relationship is very close. The whole network of research institutes, of practical research institutes like Fraunhofer, have been designed to support German industry, and German industrial success is based on research and very close cooperation supported by the state, again directly and indirectly. We must remember that a large part of German industry, and also French, is directly or indirectly owned by the government through the banks, through different foundations and so on. So we shouldn't say about the private forces among the big businesses or big companies in France or Germany. They are mostly state-owned, and this is bringing a lot of successes for those companies and for those industries. We see a lot of innovation. What is innovation? That's research and an idea implemented, commercialized. That's innovation. So it is not just, that someone invents something somewhere. It has to be commercialized. It has to be put on the market. It has to be confronted with the market, and it has to be sold and bought. And what we see in France, what we see in Germany, and also in the UK, we see a lot of the results of this collaboration being commercialized very successfully in all sorts of aspects of life.
Sir, thank you very much for this insight, and hopefully the situation will improve. Tomasz Cioska of Innovative Energy of Wrocław was our guest tonight. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's see the forecast for tomorrow. It will be breezy across Poland. Mostly in the north, wind will be gusty. In most regions we may expect plenty of sunlight, but with showers. Temperature ranging from 7 degrees on the northwest to 10 on the south and on eastern Poland. Let's take a look at tomorrow's forecast for our continent. In the Balkans, temperature will range from 10 degrees in Bucharest to 15 in Athens. On the South Europe, temperature will little rise to 23 degrees in Madrid and in Lisbon. Still warm in Rome, 18 degrees. In British Islands we will expecting rainfall. Snowfall will appear in the northeast. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
On today's episode of Poland Daily Culture, we're providing some insight into a foreigner's perspective on living in Poland. We'll be exploring their experiences and how they absorb certain aspects of the culture.
I'm joined by Jesse here. Jesse, welcome to Poland Daily Culture.
Thank you for having me, John.
Absolute pleasure. So, we're just going to discuss, just with regard, because you're involved in business, and obviously Poland is enjoying quite a successful period at present. Maybe you could tell us something about, from your experience as an outsider kind of looking in, or at least you are here, but you're kind of looking in. What is it about the mentality of people, perhaps, which has driven the current success of the economy?
Yeah, so I think as an investor looking towards Poland, and making a decision whether this is a great place to make investments. I'm looking for a couple of things. One is a mentality that is hungry for advancement. One is a society that's ethical, that follows rules. And then third is one where the cost of doing business is relatively low, sort of rather the ease of doing business. So I think across all three of these factors, Poland ranks pretty high. I think the workforce is very talented. You go down the street and practically everyone you meet speaks different languages, has a pretty strong academic and professional experience. And that's impressive because you don't have that in all other parts of Europe, and you certainly don't have that throughout the world. It's a country that respects the rule of law, where contracts are respected, and the court system is robust. And so as an investor, that brings the risk of doing business much lower in Poland versus other parts of Europe or other parts of this world. And then lastly, I think the ease of doing business here is pretty low. Rather, it's pretty easy to do business. A lot of people have gone out and started their own business since the fall of communism. So the average age of your business, your average business here in Poland, is pretty young relative to other parts of Europe or North America. And so that creates a very dynamic situation where people are hungry for opportunity, people are willing to take risk, and they want to advance themselves and advance their own well-being by going out and taking advantage of opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think people in the States or elsewhere kind of perceive the country, especially in terms of where the country stands, both in terms of employment and in terms of culture? Does the perception kind of match with the reality, would you say? Or?
Yeah, I think there's historically been a disconnect ever since the fall of communism. In the United States, Poland has still been perceived as a big part of the former Soviet bloc or the Eastern Bloc, right? And that perception is challenging because you're associating communism and the effects of communism with what is now a very dynamic part of the world. So challenging that perception has taken some time, and I think we've played catch up very recently. The fact that President Trump here has been to Poland, made this his first stop on his first trip to Europe. The fact that the United States enjoys very close ties with the Polish government at the moment. I think these are all very good things because they signal to the American business community and the American tourist that Poland is open for business. It's a fantastic destination for investment. And moreover, if you're a tourist and you're considering your next excursion to Europe, why not consider Poland? I mean, it's a very large country. It has a wealth of natural resources in addition to some really fantastic opportunities to enjoy 20th century and 20th century history, but also 19th century, 18th century history.
Yeah, very much so. I guess you don't sort of quite get that in the States quite so much, but yeah. And would you sort of say that people are slightly more in touch with their, with historically and with a sense of their own culture? Perhaps sometimes in the States they have wave a flag and feel in touch with who they are and what they represent, but they perhaps don't have the same kind of depth of understanding and knowledge of their own country. Certainly my impression of Poland itself is that there is substance to that kind of understanding. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Well, I think, speaking as an American, I think Americans have a unique sense of their place in the world. They don't necessarily have a strong sense of other people's histories. But they do have, their patriotism is really rooted in America's role in being a beacon of democracy, which we still think of ourselves as being a beacon of democracy, and America's role in the world through the context of its of conflict, of wars, right? So when Americans think of their role in the world, they've kind of historically seen that as a policeman role. Poles, I think. It's very different to that. So I think how they perceive their place in the world is as a struggle for independence, as a struggle for national unity, for national identity, and that fight is very young, because Poland came out of communism just 25 odd years ago. So it's still very much it's a presence in the minds of all the generations. From millennials to your oldest generation. And so I think that sense of nationalism is different to what we have in the United States.
Welcome to Poland Daily Culture, and today again my guest will be Nolan Maclean. Hello again, Nolan, and welcome to Poland Daily Culture.
Thanks.
So finishing our conversation about life in Poland, what do you think is the best and the worst thing about living here?
I would say easily the best thing about Poland is the people. And that, to be honest, that's true of every country I've ever visited. If you get a chance to get to know the people on a deeper level, you find out that they are educated, they are ambitious, they are curious, they are humorous, they are great cooks, and I don't know, they love to travel. They have this hunger for traveling, whether it's to Mazore or Jastarnia or the Tatras Mountains or beyond throughout Europe and the rest of the world. And that energy is addictive, and it's one of the reasons I keep staying here.
And is there a thing that you don't like?
That's a hard one. There are some inconveniences.
Standing in lines.
It's kind of funny you ask. I would say a funny inconvenience is when it's funny because you have both worlds here. Poland was, I believe, the first country in Europe to use PayPass with MasterCard. Yeah, which is fantastic. We didn't have this in America for many years.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm standing in line ready to, just zip in, zip out. And then I have somebody paying in front of me, and they're literally just paying grosz by grosz.
Yeah.
And in the same line, same shop, same neighborhood, and you have two totally different types of people. So these are the little inconveniences. Yeah. Okay, but I can live with it. 7 years ago when I moved here, I remember at Rondo ONZ, it was so cold in the winter that you had these oil barrels with charcoal and fire because you had to wait 3 minutes to cross the road. And so you're warming your hands on the corner of the street for 90 seconds or something. Now, thankfully, we have not had a winter like that, I think, in the past 7 years.
Yeah.
So it's getting easier and easier to get through the winters.
Yeah.
But I remember I purchased my first pair of winter shoes because California, we don't really have, strong winters.
Yeah.
But when I came here, you do. And I learned very quickly to not spend 100 zloty on a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
You need to invest in a good pair. Keep your feet warm.
True. And what is a bit aggravating to me is that if you go to a store, a small grocery shop, and you give them a 20 and you're paying 15, they always ask you for smaller change, or don't even think of buying a can of Coke and paying with 100.
Exactly.
You're never
They won't
get the
break
change.
a bigger bill. And so, I have to always have, coins in my pocket to make sure I have the extra, or hopefully pay with PayPass.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite Polish dish? Most people say pierogi.
Okay. I like the fried pierogis, not the boiled ones. But my favorite dish, I would say, I don't know, maybe a winter Sunday afternoon would be like a Schabowy with, starting with the Rosu, then going to Schabowy with Mizaria, and maybe finishing with the homemade Charlotka. I would say that would be my favorite.
With ice cream as well on top.
That would be nice, yeah, cold ice cream.
And is Polish a struggle for you?
The language?
Yeah.
It would be if I applied myself more, but as you know, such as yourself, I have a lot of friends in my community, or all my friends in my community, they speak English quite well or fluently. And that in my community continues to grow and to grow. So the incentive is not there for me to really need to learn. However, it's something I'm ashamed of. I probably should, learn some more to make more friends and so on. But in terms of any foreigners considering coming here, it's not something that will deter you right from the beginning. You can really build a life here without knowing Polish at the beginning.
But going to a small village in Poland, somewhere hidden in the woods, I think Polish is quite necessary to
I would agree, so I don't go there alone.
And how would you describe our culture? You said that the people are nice, the food is good, that it doesn't get that cold anymore. What do you think about it in general?
Well, the Polish culture, it is unique. Of the countries I've visited and had the opportunity to study and live in, I've never lived in one quite like Poland. But it's fascinating because you feel like you're living in history, with real-time history moving. For example, I told you I was living on Żelazna in my first apartment. I remember one building was built like yesterday, and the other building was literally destroyed during the war. And they're neighbors, they're connected.
Yeah.
You just don't see things like this in other parts of the world. And so it is fascinating to kind of live in a city like this where so many people are knowledgeable, sometimes even more about the United States than I am.
Yeah.
And so they're knowledgeable about history, about their economy, about their politics.
Yeah.
And so
people are very aware here of what is happening.
Very, very much. Very much.
Young people are very aware of the history, even from centuries ago, which I think is a very good thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we will speak with Mr. Piotr Jegliński, a member of a prominent Polish patriotic family. From the 1970s, he participated in the anti-communist dissident movement. Having started his own publishing house in Paris, he is responsible for smuggling forbidden literature back to the then communist-occupied Poland. Today, we will ask him about his life and struggle for a free Poland. So you were saying that you were testing the waters in the 1990s. And when do you feel like it's finally safe or free enough for you to return to Poland? And how does your operation with the publishing house look like after your return?
Muszę powiedzieć, że decyzja o powrocie kształtowała się mniej więcej w ciągu 1,5 roku. Ja bywałem co miesiąc w Polsce. Natomiast rodzina mieszkała w Paryżu.
To be fair, the decision to return to Poland was made over the course of a year and a half. I would visit Poland monthly, however my family lived in Paris. We returned to Poland in 1991 and our children began school in September of that year. Upon entering, we were in a very dangerous car crash, a very odd one at that. Many people suspected some foul play from the security services.
Pod ciągłą jakąś obserwacją, a to zdarzały się bez przerwy włamania do samochodu, a to jakieś dziwne rzeczy. Kiedy w grudniu 90 roku.
From the beginning, I was worried that we were under some sort of secret surveillance. Our car was routinely burgled, other odd instances would happen. In December 1990, we had begun a serious publishing project. Its aim was to publish Spotkania weekly along with a French L'Express group. We had been publishing the magazine on our own for 3 years, and we were destroyed by the communist system which controlled the distribution, for instance.
Wtedy, w 90 roku, ta książka była prezentowana na targach.
It has to be said that this was a very difficult period, since Lech Wałęsa's book Road to Freedom was being presented in May 1991. We had to spend enormous money beforehand. When we were returning from Gdańsk in November 1990 with Janusz Krupski and Antoni Mężydło, we had a terrible car crash. Most likely the steering was sabotaged, and whilst going through a turn, Janusz Krupski lost control of the vehicle.
Panowanie. Ja byłem ciężko poszkodowany, miałem w 2 miejscach pęknięty kręgosłup.
I was heavily injured. I had my spine broken in 2 places, so I was transported to France, where thanks to the help of doctors, I am able to walk to this day. Once I was able to walk, we moved the publishing headquarters to Żelazna Street in Warsaw. The weekly magazine started to be published from here. However, still, unexplained events kept on happening. There were attempts at breaking and entering with the use of a tractor, multiple breakings and enterings. I was being pushed around from one prosecutor's office to another.
Byłem ciągany po prokuraturach. Kiedy wydaliśmy książkę
When we published the book Konfidenci są wśród nas, or Snitches are among us, I was interrogated by the prosecution on multiple occasions. Later we published Lewy Czerwcowy, or Left June. Nothing changed.
Grupa L'Express została zaszantażowana, że jeżeli będzie z nami w joint venture...
Ultimately, the French L'Express were threatened that if they were to create a joint venture with us, they would lose enormous contracts worth multiple $1 billion. It is worth mentioning that L'Express Publishing House was a part of Alcatel All-Star Holding Company, which consisted of railway, telecommunication. You could say that they were renovating the entirety of Polish communication. Their management told us that they enjoyed the profile of our newspaper, and they were aware that in order to introduce a newspaper to the public, you need at least a couple of years.
Bo wiemy, żeby wprowadzić news magazyn, to trzeba paru lat. Ale mamy takie sygnały. I dali mi 6 miesięcy.
They gave me 6 months to operate, but unfortunately, despite having numerous friends in the government, I accomplished nothing, and we had to shut down Spotkania Weekly after 2.5 years in print. Despite all of these unpleasant experiences, attempts at intimidating me and my family, being dragged around between prosecutor's office, we continued our activities.
Po prokuraturach dalej żeśmy kontynuowali działalność. W sumie w tym roku
In fact, this year is the 40th anniversary of our publishing house being established. We have been in business for 40 years. That is a lot of history. A variety of Polish authors have come through our house, basically the entire elite of modern Poland. We had contacts with many people, but I view the memoirs of priest Władysław Bukowiński as the most important book we have ever published.
Bardzo wieloma ludźmi. Za taką najważniejszą książkę, która jest mi bliska mojemu sercu, to są te wspomnienia księdza Władysława Bukowińskiego. To jest wydanie, które zostało specjalnie przygotowane na uroczystości beatyfikacyjne księdza Władysława Bukowińskiego w Kazachstanie.
This edition was published especially for the beatification ceremonies of priest Władysław Bukowiński in Afghanistan. I was in Karaganda and laid this book as a gift at the altar. This book reminds me directly of Pope John Paul II and his immense kindness, benevolence and support he would offer us during his pontificate.
Pontyfikatu. Wydaliśmy w sumie w tym okresie setki tytułów. Ja nawet nie pamiętam oczywiście wszystkich. Myślę, że przekroczyliśmy chyba...
Overall, we published hundreds of titles. Even I can't remember all of them. I believe that we printed over 1 million books. That's a conservative estimate. Among the books that were published just recently, there is W Trzech Wojnach, or In 3 Wars by Roman Potocki, who was Marshal Piłsudski's aide during 3 wars. This picture on the front cover depicts a Berdachów railway station in April 1920, shortly after Polish forces entered the area. Back there is General Listowski, the leader of the front line. We also published beautiful books in excellent covers. This is the same book in a leather cover with golden ornaments. These units are for book collectors.
W oprawie skórzanej, prawda, z bardzo pięknymi ornamentami. Książki bibliofilskie. Też zaczęliśmy wydawać w językach obcych.
Additionally, we began printing books in foreign languages. To promote that, we organized a concert in St. Louis Basilica in Paris, commemorating the 100th anniversary of Poland regaining its independence. To celebrate this occasion, we published a book by Professor Piotr La Pologne, an illustrated history of Poland in French.
Ilustrowana historia Polski w języku francuskim, bo muszę powiedzieć,
I must admit, there is a severe lack of literature regarding our country. Because of that, it is not unusual for foreigners to be unaware of the Polish history and mistakenly name some historical terms. I would not look for malice in all of such occurrences, although malice often is in play. Sometimes these problems happen due to ignorance.
Bardzo częsty przykład, ale przez zwykłą niewiedzę na temat naszych dziejów. Oprócz tych książek w ostatnim czasie wydaliśmy...
Apart from these books, we recently published a book about the Fighting Solidarity movement. It contains interviews with Andrzej Kołodziej and Kornel Morawiecki, the unbroken ones. For many, many years, ever since the inception of the Fighting Solidarity movement, I cooperated with them, and I believe it to be one of the most important organizations which operated in the last decades.
Pracowałem i uważam, że to jest jedna z najważniejszych organizacji, jakie działały w ostatnich dziesięcioleciach.
Mr. Jegliński's family, his personal history, and his activities is a perfect reflection of the generation-long struggle for Polish independence. At times, the resistance against foreign powers were fought with weapons in hand. But in other times, it was conducted with the smuggling of printing press and forbidden literature. That's it for today. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello and welcome to Poland Daily. We're really glad that you've joined us, because without you, there'd be no point in doing this. In this next series of episodes, we're going to be looking around the Warsaw New Town. It's still very old, don't worry. We'll start off at the Hotel Le Regina. After that, we're going to take a walk and see the oldest church in Warsaw, and one of the oldest in the country. We'll get you up to date on the history of the place and talk about a very famous person who once lived right around the corner. That is Madame Curie, the famous scientist. From there, we'll continue back to the Old Town, stopping off at the Barbican. That's the old wall that surrounds the whole area. It's pretty amazing. So if anybody needs any advice on how to build a wall, they might start here. After that, we'll go to a restaurant in the Old Town for some traditional Polish food. And to top things off, the cherry on the cake will be a trip to the largest souvenir shop in Warsaw. Well, you won't want to miss that. So stay with us for adventures in the new town of Warsaw. It's Poland Daily Travel, probably the greatest travel information about Poland in the world. So here we are now on the edge of the river, yeah? Looking over the river, and behind us is we're behind the church. What's the statue of behind us?
Maria Skłodowska, born in Warsaw's Old Town, just steps away from here. And after she was born, she knew she wants to develop, she wants to develop in chemistry. And she started to making here her first experiments. Her sister went first to Paris, then she joined her. She became a student of Sorbonne University and then first female professor of Sorbonne University. And she became one of mothers of Polish independence. Everyone knows that the second element she discovered, named polonium, is a name of a country that was not existing on the maps at this time. So when Poland got back its independence, once again it's Poland on the maps. So why not appreciating her so much? Hey, take a look. There's a sculpture of Maria Skłodowska standing, looking down the river Skarp, the Vistula River,
the escarpment, yeah,
at the very roots of Poland.
And Maria Curie's house is not far away. We're going to go there next. Yeah?
Yes.
We're going to go through the old, the new town square.
Yes.
And then to her house. Yeah.
Yes, just passing by, so to reach some lunch.
On our way to lunch, because we're getting hungry, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're getting hungry. All right, you're a good man, Arthur. You're a good man, Nick. You want to say anything, Nick, about this?
Well, I think it's just a marvellous unit, because we mentioned earlier the fountain with the light show, and the fountain is just down there, and of course it's winter now, so the water's not playing.
Yeah.
But it's a marvellous new fountain, and then when it gets dark, the fountain moves in coloured lights. It's actually quite spectacular.
Yeah, in the summer it's something to see.
Exactly.
But we won't see today. The water would probably freeze.
Well, the water would definitely freeze today, yeah.
It's funny, every time we shoot,
we're in cold weather.
It's in cold weather. It doesn't. This is the coldest day. It's going to be really getting progressively. It's been warmer.
It'll get warmer.
And progressively warmer next week.
Before we know, we'll be complaining it's too hot.
It'll
so
be
don't
too
worry.
hot. It'll be too hot soon. Okay, so here's from too cold to too hot, and a little bit of complaining never hurt anybody. So stay with us. We're going to go for a walk now. Do you go to this church?
I haven't been to that church, but the church behind it was the one where they had Latin Mass, and they moved the Latin Mass to a different church.
The smaller church?
Yes.
Oh, right.
But I see that church also has Latin Mass, so maybe I'll investigate further on Sunday.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you do,
I'll let you know,
tell us what happens. Yeah.
Will do.
And where are we, Arthur? What do you have to say about this here part of the world?
If you wrote, just searched on Google Images Warsaw's new town, then this is what appears. The picture that we are having at the moment, with the very white church with greenish rooftop over top. It's the St. Casimir Church, 17th century construction, and the very important architect of these days, Tilman von Gammeren. We are having architects from all over the world, remember? So we are having important churches constructed in here by them, designed by them. And the amazing history of this church and the sad history of this church. 1,000 people were hospitalized in here.
Hospitalized?
This is, thank you very much, the word. I was checking if you know this word as well.
I thought you were. Yeah. Hey, I know that word.
And 1,000 people were bombed during World War II when they were inside this church, once again reconstructed. So it's once again in here on the main market square of the new town. So many important history things behind the corners. Maria Skłodowska-Curie house right over there, just steps away. Perfect.
Now, so we'll proceed across this big square. There's nothing here, but this would have in the old days been a place with a lot of stalls and selling all kinds of different foods and goods, right? Or not?
So this is what main market squares were for, to sell your goods. But we must remember that every single time there were big market squares and small market squares.
Yeah, watch the water.
And
big icy
pool. No, we must appreciate our cameraman at the moment, because he made it through this water so bravely. So to give you a possibility to see this
walked
amazing...
on water.
No, he almost
walked in water.
Only if we waited 1 hour more, it would freeze, because it's so amazingly cold right now.
Yeah.
But soon, just perfect moments for
last
visiting.
Last gasp of winter is what's happening now. And what's this thing here?
And that's a symbol of Warsaw. If you took a closer look, there is a lady with a unicorn. That's a symbol of Warsaw's new town.
Up here.
From the very early 1400s. It's been the symbol of Warsaw's new town. So a unicorn on his 2 back legs standing, and the lady next to him. So such we are referring
I never noticed that before. That's the symbol of the
new Warsaw. Nowadays
Warsaw.
called the new town, but over then the new Warsaw.
Because the other symbol is
the mermaid.
The mermaid. So how come there are two symbols?
Because these were two different cities, two separated cities. You were enjoying yourself on the sofa in La Regina Hotel when I was telling you about it.
Yeah, but I mean, because the old town had the walls around it, yeah?
Yeah.
And that was the difference.
We are outside.
We're outside the walls
yeah.
of the... It's not far away, but we're outside the walls.
It's right in here.
So this was the symbol of the new town. Interesting. Why do you think, suppose they chose a unicorn?
So this is a question that I ask to myself. But tell me, who doesn't like unicorns?
I don't know. I've never seen one, but
well,
interesting. You ever seen one, Nick?
Not a real one, no.
No, I've never seen one. Yeah, it's interesting though. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to from magic and unicorns. We're going to the House of Science over here.